Elias stood in the center of the armory, a place he had come to know better than any corner of the human quarters. The walls glimmered with polished metal and strange alloys, catching the soft lights that floated from the ceiling. Every piece of armor here was alive in its own way, responding to the warriors it belonged to. Yet despite the many machines and tools around him, Elias felt a strange nervousness. Today, he was assigned to the armor of Commander Vierlia, the most respected warrior in the Celestial Guard. She was feared and admired in equal measure, a legend among her people. Elias, by contrast, was just a human, known more for patience and careful hands than strength or courage. He took a deep breath and adjusted his gloves, checking the intricate tools laid out before him. The armor before him was unlike any he had ever worked on. Its surface shifted subtly, a living mesh that changed shape according to the wearer's movements and emotions. Elias had read the technical manuals a dozen times, but reading was not the same as feeling. The armor was delicate, almost alive, and any mistake could cause damage that no human repair could fix. Vierlia entered silently. Even without her armor fully engaged, her presence filled the room. She moved with a grace that seemed effortless, yet every step carried the weight of command. Elias felt his heart beat faster, though he had seen warriors and dignitaries before. There was something about her that demanded attention without demanding it, a quiet authority that humans struggled to understand. "Commander," Elias said softly, bowing slightly as he approached, "I am ready to begin the adjustments." Vierlia nodded, the motion minimal but precise. "Do what you must, I will remain still." Her voice was calm, even almost melodic, but Elias caught a hint of curiosity behind it, something almost human in its tone. He reminded himself to focus on his work. Feelings had no place in the armory, and yet somehow they did. He knelt beside the armor, examining the seam lines and energy conduits. The living mesh pulsed faintly under his touch, sensing his presence. He had studied this technology for years, but never had he encountered armor that seemed to respond not only to physical input but to emotional states. Elias realized that every subtle shift in his own nerves caused a ripple in the mesh. He swallowed hard and steadied his hands. As he worked, he felt her gaze not on his hands but on him. He did not need to look up to know she was watching. It was not inspection or judgment. It was observation, careful and deliberate. Humans often misread such moments as intimidation or threat, but Elias had learned to see them differently. Vierlia was measuring more than skill. She was measuring patience, focus, and calm. Hours passed. Elias worked meticulously, tightening microscopic connectors, smoothing the surface where the mesh had begun to misalign, adjusting the feedback nodes that allowed the armor to respond to thought as much as movement. Occasionally, he would pause to recalibrate, his mind focused on the patterns, the subtle harmonics of the living metal. Then, as he leaned closer to adjust a particularly stubborn segment, he heard it, a whisper so soft he almost imagined it. "Do you love me, human?" Elias froze. His hands hovered midair, tools trembling slightly. The question was not loud, not demanding, yet it reverberated inside him with a weight he did not expect. He glanced up, and for the first time, Vierlia's eyes met his. There was no mockery, no challenge. Only vulnerability. He could not respond. Words felt heavy, inadequate, impossible. His mind raced for a proper answer, something that would not betray him or fail her, but nothing came. He realized with an almost painful clarity that he had never considered the possibility that a warrior, an alien, a legend, someone untouchable, could truly care about a human. Vierlia's armor pulsed gently under her skin, a subtle vibration that matched the rhythm of her breath. Elias could feel it through the tools he held, a faint connection he could not explain. It was as if the armor itself understood the moment, acknowledging it without judgment. "Your hands are steady," she said softly after a pause. "Why do you hesitate?" I don't know how to answer," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He set the tools down carefully, leaning back just slightly, though the proximity made him aware of the faint warmth radiating from her armor. I have never been asked that before. By anyone. Especially not by you. She allowed a small smile, almost imperceptible. Then do not answer, just continue. Focus on the work. Elias nodded, though the words did little to calm the storm inside him. He returned to the adjustments, but the room felt different now. The soft hum of the armor, the subtle play of light across the metallic surfaces, and the steady breathing of Violia created a harmony he had never noticed before. For the first time, he felt that his work had meaning beyond repair and function. It mattered to someone, perhaps to someone extraordinary. As the hours passed, they fell into an unusual rhythm. Elias worked and she remained still, observing him quietly. Occasionally, she would shift slightly, and the armor would respond, providing tiny feedback adjustments that made his task easier. Each time, he realized that the armor and its wearer were more intimately connected than the manuals suggested. Elias marveled at the intelligence woven into the metal, the way it anticipated needs, responded to stress, and even seemed to offer comfort. At one point, he paused to wipe his brow, and Violia tilted her head slightly. "You worry too much," she said, her voice gentle. "Perfection is not the goal, understanding is." Elias blinked. Understanding. That was not in the manuals either, yet he felt the truth of her words. The armor was not just a tool or a weapon. It was a living extension of her, and he was beginning to see it not as something to control, but as something to respect and connect with. The day wore on, and sunlight faded outside the armory, replaced by the soft glow of artificial lights. Elias had completed most of the adjustments, yet he could not bring himself to leave. There was a tension between them, a fragile bridge built from trust, curiosity, and something deeper he could not name. Finally, he finished the final alignment and the armor's surface shimmered as if acknowledging his work. He leaned back and exhaled slowly, feeling a rare sense of accomplishment. Violia spoke then, her voice calm but firm. "You have done well, human. Better than I expected." Elias managed a small smile, though his thoughts remained tangled in the question she had asked. "Thank you," he said. "It is an honor to work with you." She nodded once. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned slightly closer, her voice almost a whisper again. "Do you know why I asked?" Elias shook his head, unsure if he should speak. "Because no one has ever made me feel seen," she said. "Not the council, not my peers, not even the armor itself. But you notice things. You notice me." Elias felt his chest tighten. He realized then that her question was not just about affection or personal feeling. It was about recognition, about being understood, about the quiet longing that even the strongest among them could carry. He wanted to speak, to tell her that he did care, that her presence mattered, but he did not trust words to capture the moment. Instead, he simply nodded, letting the silence communicate what words could not. For the first time in his life, Elias understood the full weight of human presence. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, but their ability to notice, to care, to connect, made them formidable in ways the galaxy rarely recognized. And here, before him, was proof. The night deepened, and the armory was quiet except for the soft hum of the living armor and their breathing. Elias finally stood, gathering his tools, yet he could not leave just yet. He lingered, aware that this moment was fleeting, yet precious. Violia spoke once more, softly, almost as if to herself. "You are human, yet somehow you are the one who teaches me to feel." Elias paused, his hand on the door. He did not answer. There were no words adequate for this truth. And yet, in the quiet of the armory, amidst the shimmer of living metal and the soft glow of lights, he felt a bond that was rare and unspoken, a bridge between species, a spark of something extraordinary. And though the question still hung in the air, he knew that in that instant something fundamental had shifted. Humanity had left its mark not through strength or conquest, but through care, attention, and the courage to simply be present. The armory doors closed behind him as he finally left, and the silence settled again. But the memory lingered, the warmth, the pulse of the armor, the soft voice asking a question that no human had been asked before. Elias realized that he had glimpsed something extraordinary, not in battle or achievement, but in connection. And in that quiet understanding, he knew that this was only the beginning. Elias returned to the armory the next morning with a quiet determination. Sleep had not brought him rest. Instead, he had spent the hours replaying the moment when Violia had asked her question. He understood now that this was more than curiosity. It was a test, not of his skills, but of his mind and heart. Humans were unpredictable in a universe that prized control and precision, and that unpredictability had caught Violia's attention. As he stepped into the armory, he saw her already waiting. She was standing near the edge of the room, her armor resting in its neutral state, shimmering faintly under the light. She did not speak immediately, as if giving him the chance to choose the words first. Elias swallowed hard. Today he had to show not only competence but insight. He approached her calmly, tools in hand, trying to steady the rapid beat of his heart. "Good morning, Commander. Are we continuing with the adjustments?" he asked, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. Violia tilted her head slightly. "Yes, but today we will try something different. I want you to understand how my armor responds to thought, not just touch." Elias paused, intrigued. "Thought? You mean it responds to your mind?" She nodded. "It has always done so. But humans rarely notice this. They focus on the mechanics. You notice more. I want to see if you can perceive it fully." For the next hour, Elias studied the armor with heightened attention. He observed subtle pulses that corresponded to Violia's breathing, minor fluctuations in energy that reflected her emotions, and the way the mesh shifted almost imperceptibly when she considered movement. Every observation required patience and focus, but Elias found himself immersed in a rhythm, feeling almost as if the armor itself were a partner in the work. Then, unexpectedly, Violia spoke softly. "Tell me, human, why do your species value observation so highly?" Elias blinked, caught off guard by the question. He considered answering carefully. "Humans notice small details because survival often depends on them. We learn patterns, understand behavior, predict outcomes. Observation is not just science, it is how we understand each other and the world." She regarded him silently as though weighing every word. Then she said, "That is interesting. I see it in you. Even in your hands, in the way you adjust the mesh, I see a thoughtfulness that my people rarely practice." Elias felt a mix of pride and nervousness. He had always believed humans were underestimated in the galaxy. Their technology was often considered simple, their bodies fragile, their species weak. But here, in the presence of a legendary warrior, he felt the truth of humanity. Not strength of muscle, but strength of mind and perception. Hours passed, and the two of them worked in quiet harmony. Occasionally, Violia would adjust her posture or suggest a change, and Elias would respond, learning to anticipate her needs almost intuitively. It was unlike anything he had experienced. Humans often relied on instinct and improvisation, but this required listening and observation at a level that bordered on empathy. He realized that the armor itself responded not only to Violia, but to him as well. His careful attention seemed to reinforce its balance, creating a subtle harmony among the three, Violia, the armor, and himself. During a short pause, Elias cleaned his tools, wiping sweat from his brow. Violia approached and watched him silently. He could feel her presence more acutely now, not as authority but as an equal in this quiet task. The earlier question still hung in his mind, though he did not dare speak of it. Yet in the silence, a shared understanding began to grow. Humans and her kind rarely interacted with such intimacy, but here it was happening naturally, without force or expectation. "Human," Violia said suddenly. "I have a question about your species again. Do humans feel more deeply than we assume?" Elias considered this. "Yes, we do. We feel a lot, sometimes too much, but our feelings guide us. They make us curious, creative, careful, or brave. They can also make us impatient or reckless, but we learn to balance them." She seemed to reflect on this for a moment, her eyes distant. "Perhaps that is why you notice things I never would. Perhaps that is why I asked the question." Elias looked up sharply. She was referring to the whispered question from before. He felt a flutter of nerves but chose to remain calm. He realized now that he did not need to answer with words. The connection between them was growing stronger through shared focus, understanding, and respect. The day moved on, and a challenge arose. A segment of her armor had begun to emit a faint, irregular pulse, a phenomenon that manuals described as highly unusual and often unstable. Typically, only other elite engineers could handle such anomalies. Elias examined the segment carefully, realizing that the fluctuation was tied to Violia's subtle emotional state. It was not damage, it was resonance. "Commander," Elias said softly, "the irregularity is related to your focus. Your mind is projecting more than the armor expects." Violia raised an eyebrow. "Then it is not a malfunction." "No," Elias replied. "It is adaptation. The armor responds to you, but it can also respond to me if I maintain calm and steady guidance. If I adjust carefully, it will balance again." She studied him intently. "You think humans can influence the armor?" Elias nodded. "Not by force, by attention, by understanding. It listens to us both." Violia's eyes softened. She leaned slightly closer. "Show me, human. Show me what you mean." For the next hour, Elias guided the process. He explained each subtle movement, each adjustment of energy flow, and the armor began to synchronize. It shimmered with renewed stability, harmonizing perfectly with both Violia's presence and his attention. She watched him closely, her expression one of awe mingled with quiet appreciation. When the adjustments were complete, Violia relaxed fully for the first time that day. "Remarkable," she whispered. "No one has ever shown me this level of understanding." Elias felt a sense of pride, but it was accompanied by something deeper, a realization of the quiet power of humans in the galaxy. They were not strong in the traditional sense, but their strength lay in patience, empathy, and intellect. That strength had allowed him to stabilize the armor, not by domination but through connection. Violia moved closer and observed him carefully. "Human, I am learning that strength is not always visible. That even a species thought weak can teach lessons of power without force." Elias smiled slightly. "That is humanity, Commander. We are small, often underestimated, but we survive and adapt by noticing, learning, and understanding." She nodded, a faint smile crossing her features. "And perhaps that is why I asked the question before, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed to see if someone could truly notice me." Elias felt his heart tighten, though he remained composed. He had come to understand that her question was never about affection in the way humans thought of it. It was about recognition, validation, and trust. And in this quiet armory, trust had been built, not through words, but through shared effort and observation. The day began to fade into evening. Lights dimmed and the armory quieted. Elias packed his tools, though he hesitated to leave. There was a sense of possibility in the air, a feeling that something profound was beginning. Violia spoke softly. "Stay, human. Walk with me for a moment." Elias followed, and they moved through the quiet halls of the armory together. The soft hum of machinery accompanied their steps, and Elias realized that this simple walk, devoid of ceremony or urgency, was one of the most significant experiences of his life. "Do you know," she said after a pause, "that the Council watches interactions like ours closely?" Elias nodded. "I assumed, but they do not understand. They see only potential risk, not potential growth." She looked at him with quiet intensity. You see more than most. That is rare and valuable." They stopped near a large observation window overlooking the city below. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the alien architecture. Elias felt a wave of calm and awe. The city, the armor, and the commander herself, all of it seemed interconnected in ways humans had never imagined. Violia spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "Human, you remind me that there is more to life than duty, rules, or perfection. Sometimes, noticing, understanding, and simply being present is the greatest contribution one can make." Elias felt a profound sense of connection. Then perhaps that is what humans bring to the galaxy. Not power, not conquest, but presence, care, and understanding. She smiled faintly. "Perhaps. And that is why I trust you, human. Not because you are strong or clever, but because you see me. You see the world as it is, not as it should be." The light outside faded completely, leaving only the soft illumination of the armory. Elias knew that this moment, quiet and simple as it was, marked a turning point. Humans, fragile and underestimated, were capable of teaching even the strongest warriors something profound. That connection, observation, and care could shape the future in ways that power alone never could. And in that moment, Elias realized that the question asked before, the one that had frozen him in place, was not a question he needed to answer with words. It had been answered by everything they had shared, by the trust built, by the subtle harmonies of the armor, the commander, and himself. Humanity had shown its value not through combat, but through understanding, patience, and presence. As he finally prepared to leave, Violia spoke once more softly, almost as if to herself. "Humans, fragile, small, yet remarkable. Perhaps the galaxy is stronger for having them." Elias stepped out into the quiet halls, a sense of purpose and pride swelling within him. He understood now that being human was not a weakness, it was a gift. And through simple attention, care, and presence, humans could shape not only technology, but hearts, minds, and even the course of civilizations. He walked into the night, the memory of the day, the armor, and the whispered question lingering in his mind. And he knew that the journey had only just begun. The morning sun filtered through the translucent walls of the armory, casting a soft glow over the polished metal and intricate lines of armor. Elias arrived early, as he always did, but today was different. He could feel it in the quiet hum of the armory, and in the faint energy that pulsed through the living armor. Today was not just about adjustments or maintenance. It was about understanding, about bridging a gap that no manual, no protocol, and no previous human engineer had ever attempted. Violia was already present, standing near the center of the room with her armor in its neutral state. She did not speak immediately, merely observing Elias as he unpacked his tools. The silence was comfortable now, familiar, and yet it carried weight. Yesterday's lessons had changed everything. The small, fragile human had proven that presence, care, and understanding could influence a warrior and her armor in ways the galaxy had not anticipated. "Good morning, Commander," Elias said softly, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. "Are we ready to continue?" Violia inclined her head slightly. "Yes, human. Today, we will explore resonance beyond the physical. Your attention will guide more than just the mesh. It will influence how the armor interacts with me and perhaps with the environment." Elias paused, considering her words. He had thought he understood the armor yesterday, but this was new. The living mesh, he realized, was not simply a tool or protection. It was a reflection of the warrior, her mind, and now, potentially, his own presence. His human attention, his patience and perception, could influence it as profoundly as her own focus. He knelt beside the armor, tools in hand, and began the adjustments with meticulous care. Every movement, every slight pressure, every subtle alignment required observation and intuition. The armor shimmered faintly, responding to both the commander's thoughts and Elias' attention. It was a delicate balance, like conducting an orchestra where the instruments themselves could feel the music. As he worked, Virlia spoke softly, almost as if testing him. Human, tell me more about your species. How do humans create understanding between one another? How do you teach empathy? Elias thought carefully. We listen first, he said. We observe without judgment. We try to understand not just words, but actions, expressions, and even silences. We learn patience because understanding cannot be rushed. And most importantly, we act based on what we notice, not what we assume. Virlia tilted her head slightly, her eyes thoughtful. Interesting. Your kind values presence more than perfection. Yes, Elias agreed. We make mistakes, but those mistakes teach us. And through noticing and adapting, we grow stronger in ways that force alone cannot create. She seemed to reflect on his words, her expression softening. Perhaps that is why I trust you, human. You notice, you adapt, and you do not impose. You are a guide without authority. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Trust from a warrior like Virlia was rare, a recognition beyond words, a validation of human worth in a galaxy that often underestimated his kind. As he continued his work, a new complication emerged. A minor feedback loop began to appear within the armor's energy conduits. Normally, such an anomaly would be treated as a defect, but Elias noticed that it was linked to Virlia's emotional state, a reflection of her thoughts and reactions. The armor was not broken, it was revealing a deeper connection between its wearer and the human guiding it. Commander, Elias said, the feedback is not damage, it is resonance. The armor responds to your thoughts but also to mine. If we synchronize, it will stabilize naturally. Virlia observed him with keen interest. Synchronize? Show me how. Elias guided her through the process, explaining each subtle adjustment and how her thoughts influenced the living mesh. The armor shimmered, pulsating in response, and gradually the feedback loop diminished. The resonance became harmonious, a delicate balance of human attention, alien cognition, and living technology. You have done it, Virlia whispered, awe evident in her voice. I have never experienced this level of control, of balance, not through training, not through discipline, but through presence. Elias nodded, quietly proud. He had always believed humans had value beyond what others saw. Today he had proven it, not with strength, not with weapons, but with understanding and patience. The two of them paused, allowing the quiet to settle. The armory felt alive, not with machinery or light, but with the subtle energy of connection. Virlia studied him, her expression unreadable at first, then softening as a small smile appeared. Human, she said after a pause, yesterday you stabilized the armor. Today you have taught me something I did not know I needed to learn. You have shown me the power of observation, care, and patience. Elias felt his pulse quicken. He had not expected recognition in such a personal way. I am glad, Commander, he said. I have learned as much from you as you may have from me. The armor, your presence, it has taught me how resilience and understanding can work together. She stepped closer, the armor shimmering subtly around her. And yet, your species is often underestimated. Why is that? Elias considered. Humans are small, physically fragile. We are not warriors in the traditional sense, but our strength lies in curiosity, patience, and empathy. We can adapt, learn, and notice what others ignore. That is why we survive, why we influence, and why we can change outcomes without using force. Virlia's eyes met his, and in that moment, Elias felt the depth of her understanding. Her whispered question from the first day, the one that had frozen him, was not about love in the way humans understood it. It was about recognition, about seeing worth in someone thought insignificant. And through careful attention, through shared effort, Elias had answered without words. Then perhaps, she said softly, human presence is not only useful but essential. Perhaps the galaxy is stronger for having you among us. Elias smiled faintly. He felt a profound sense of purpose. Humanity had always been underestimated in interstellar affairs, dismissed for their small size and fragile bodies. Yet here was proof that their true strength was different. Humans did not conquer with force. They influenced, they observed, they connected. That influence could stabilize a legendary warrior, harmonize living technology, and change perspectives. Virlia moved to the observation window, and Elias followed. The city outside sprawled beneath them, a testament to alien architecture and ingenuity. Yet Elias could not help but notice the human perspective within him, the ability to see patterns, harmony, and potential in unexpected places. "Human," Virlia said, her voice quiet against the hum of the armory, "you remind me that the galaxy is not solely ruled by strength, but by attention, patience, and understanding. That is, powerful in ways my people rarely consider." Elias nodded. "And humans have much to learn as well, but we survive, we adapt, and we connect. That is our gift." A silence fell between them, not awkward but deliberate, as if both understood the significance of the moment. The armory, the armor, the city outside, all of it seemed to exist in harmony, shaped by presence rather than force, by understanding rather than authority. Virlia finally spoke again. "You have changed something fundamental, human. Not the armor, not me, but perception. You have shown that strength can exist without dominance, that influence can be gentle and deliberate. That is rare." Elias felt a swelling of pride, tempered by humility. Humans were small and fragile, yes, but they carried something else. The ability to see, to notice, to care, and to connect in ways that altered the course of events without violence. Here was proof of that power. The day progressed, and together they conducted further adjustments and tests. Every movement was precise, every interaction purposeful. The armor responded not only to its wearer but to Elia's calm attention, creating a dynamic that was unprecedented. Virlia's trust in him grew with every moment, as did his respect for her patience and intelligence. At one point she asked softly, "Human, do you think your species could influence others beyond this armory, beyond this city?" Elias considered. "Yes. We have always influenced in small ways, through care, observation, and understanding. But I think if we are patient, respectful, and willing to learn, humans could change more than just machines or warriors. We could change perspectives, systems, and even cultures without fighting or demanding." Virlia's eyes widened slightly. "That is remarkable. I never imagined that the smallest species could hold such influence." "Strength comes in many forms," Elias said quietly. "Not all of them require force. Some come from noticing, understanding, and connecting." The day ended with a quiet moment by the window, the city bathed in the soft glow of artificial lights. Elias and Virlia stood side by side, the living armor shimmering gently, a reflection of harmony between species, minds, and intentions. Finally, she turned to him, voice low and sincere. "Human, you have taught me something extraordinary. You have shown me that even the smallest being can make a profound difference. That is, worth more than strength alone." Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The whispered question from the first day, the uncertainty, the hesitation, it had all led to this. Words were no longer necessary. Trust, understanding, and shared experience had conveyed what language could not. Humanity had proven its value not through conquest or dominance, but through connection, care, and insight. As he left the armory that night, Elias understood that this was only the beginning. Humans were underestimated in the galaxy, yes, but their true power lay in subtlety, patience, and presence. And through those qualities, they could change hearts, minds, and even civilizations. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the armory, the living armor pulsed gently, a reflection of the bond formed, a reminder that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not strength or weapons, but understanding, attention, and the courage to simply be present. The galaxy had learned a quiet truth. Small hands, patient minds, and kind hearts could shape destinies as profoundly as the strongest warriors or the most advanced technology. And in that understanding, humanity had left its mark, indelible, subtle, and extraordinary.